Philip Schulman, Director of Trump Rapid Response for the State Democratic Party of Wisconsin. Today, we're going to talk about Mike Pence's visit to the Badger State and the need to open up the ACA enrollment period. But before we do, there are a few things you should know. Trump was told on January 3rd about the impending coronavirus pandemic, but instead of using that time to build and stockpile personal protective equipment and ventilators, work with his economic team to create a plan that would make sure that the inevitable job loss that would happen took care of Wisconsinites and Americans everywhere, he wasted that time.
It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle, it will disappear.
He took the word of President Xi and the Chinese government over the word of his own intelligence community. He sent 18 tons of PPE to China, and the so-called travel ban that he's now bragging about still let 40,000 people into the country. So no, Trump didn't respond to the coronavirus pandemic in a timely manner. He ignored the problem until it became a political headache. Now let's fast forward to a couple of weeks ago when the state of Wisconsin was forced to hold an in-person election because of President Trump, the RNC, the State Republican Party of Wisconsin, and their conservative allies on both the state Supreme Court and the United States Supreme Court. Voters were given the choice. You can either vote in person and risk your life, or you can forfeit your democratic rights. That's the choice they gave voters. It didn't have to be this way. We could have made it an all-mail ballot election. We could have moved the election date. There were plans that could have been executed, Democrats and Republicans working together to uphold our democracy and keep people safe. But that's not what Trump wanted, and that's not what his allies wanted. So where are we? Well, it was just reported that the first election-related coronavirus cases are in the books, and unfortunately, those numbers are going to continue to rise. We've already seen over 4,000 cases reported across the state, and over 220 have died. Now, because of what Trump decided, because of what his colleagues and allies decided, that number is only going to rise, and things are only going to get worse. Let's look what he did before votes were actually cast. The day before the election, he used his coronavirus briefing to encourage people to vote for the candidate of his choice.
Well, who should be held responsible if people get sick after they voted?
Look, all I did was endorse a candidate. I don't know anything about their lines. I don't know anything about their voting.
He encouraged people to go to the polls despite this deadly pandemic, despite what his own federal government was telling people to do. And then the next day, he tweeted out the same thing on 3 separate occasions. He ignored what was in the best interest of Wisconsinites and people across this country simply because he wanted a political victory. So that brings us to Mike Pence's visit, where he recently visited a GE facility that was creating ventilators. Now, he's violating the federal government's own travel advisory warnings so that he can get a photo op. He wants to make it look like the administration is doing something, that they've been well prepared. And I'm sure many of you heard it yourself, he more or less took a victory lap touting how well the administration had done. And we all simply know that's just not the case. So Mike Pence shouldn't be badgering us. He should be back in Washington. He should be working with lawmakers, trying to figure out solutions that will keep us healthy, that will get people back to work, that'll get us back to some semblance of normalcy. But no, he's using taxpayer money, he's violating travel advisories simply so he can smile in front of a camera. Because that's the administration's priority. It's not your health, it's not my health, it's not the health of Wisconsinites or Americans everywhere. It's about winning the day and moving on to the next. So what the administration can do at a time like this, at a bare minimum, something they actually promised they would do a couple weeks ago, was make sure that the uninsured had their healthcare needs taken care of. We don't have a plan. We don't expect a plan. This is the same administration that tried to take away the Affordable Care Act and protections for people with pre-existing conditions. So we're not hoping for anything from them. But at a minimum, they could open up the ACA re-enrollment period, because that would at least let all these hundreds of thousands of Wisconsinites who lost their jobs and those who lost their health care to at least get some semblance of coverage that in the event they get sick, they don't wait until the last minute to go get the care they need and further burden the hospital system. That's why it's so important. Trump and Mike Pence continue to lie. They continue to try to spin this into some fantasy that everything is going to be okay sooner than later. And that's not the case, and it's because they didn't act. So the least they can do is what we just talked about. The least they can do is start telling us the truth. The least they can do is actually start caring about people's lives and not the political consequences.